I would like to welcome Francois Valois to the stage. And he's from Bentley Systems, and that's, again, our newest platinum partner, so we thank them for their support. I'll do a quick introduction of Francois, and then he'll come up to the stage. So Francois Valois is the Vice President of Civil Infrastructure and Director of Bentley Canada and Bentley Systems. Francois joined Bentley in 2004. He is now Vice President of Civil Infrastructure. As such, he is playing a general manager role for the civil business. Francois is responsible for the overall operation of the unit, including strategy, finance, HR, go-to-market, innovation, software development, business development, partnership, new business venture, and user success. The civil engineering business is one of Bentley's largest units and includes products such as Open Roads, Open Rail, Open Bridge, Open Site, Civil Digital Twins, Open Flows, and other products. Francois is also leading the AI innovation for civil engineering. His previous role at Bentley Systems was Vice President, Portfolio Development, responsible for mergers and acquisitions, and the accelerated development business. He oversees all aspects of Bentley's portfolio development function, including acquisition, integration, accelerated development, venture subsidiaries, OEM, and other third-party relationships. At Bentley, Francois has occupied multiple functions, including Senior Director of Software Development for reality modeling, Director of Product Management for Civil Mining, Reality Modeling, Geospatial, Utilities, Communications, and Geotechnical. Before joining Bentley Systems, Francois was working at Esri in Redlands, California, as part of the geometry, topology, and editing team as a product engineer responsible for designing, testing, and documenting functionality related to the geometry and topology subsystems. So welcome, Francois, to the stage. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Good. It's a great spot to be there before lunch, so hopefully keep that entertaining. Look, I'm here today to talk about AI and infrastructure. But before I do this, I just want to introduce Bentley Systems. So Bentley Systems is a global software company. So we are the #1 engineering software for infrastructure, and we're now focused on digital twin applied to infrastructure. So that's where we're heading. And AI, of course, plays a key role in all of this. So AI is at an inflection point. I mean, we hear about that all the time. The GPT of this world just recently sort of made it possible to do a lot of things that were not possible before. But then it's also going to change a lot the infrastructure business, right? There's no way that is going to not affect us one way or the other. So let's talk about that. So Goldman Sachs, for example, has been saying that almost every single task that engineering contractor essentially are performing today will not be impacted by, the kind of, things that AI can do. However, they are not foreseeing AI replacing people, but rather complementing the engineers, complementing the contractor, complementing the operators. So think about an augmented human. So there's going to be sort of two sorts of human, right? People, the normal human and the human on steroid powered by a robot or an AI. So, and that's basically how the engineers world will look like as well, for sure. Our approach is being to create co-pilots and to let the engineers do what they do best, which is think, and let the machines do things that are, more repetitive, more mundane. I'll show you some examples of that as well. Why do we need this? I mean, most engineering firms have a 12 months backlog today it's just too much work. I mean, that's in Canada, but that's everywhere as well. We see this on every single of our clients. They're just saying, help us, right? There's not enough people entering the engineering schools. There's not enough, a lot of people are retiring. The work habits and working overtime, all of it post-COVID has been like much less. So people want to have a life balance, much more than before. So I think this has changed a lot, and there's just so much demand for engineering today that it's not possible. So generative AI is going to help a lot, and some of the benefits that were mentioned earlier, and things like making more sustainable design, making better decision, making more cost-effective design. This is all the promise of what generative AI can do. But how do we harness that, and how do we make it work for engineering? Is kind of the question, right? So the way we look at it is that digital twin essentially is one of the key enabler. So you got on the left hand essentially the computer, the robot, and the right hand the human. And how do they connect together? Through data. You need to have, data is the new oil, and it's not that new anymore, but it's very important. And still our data today is all in silos, whether that's in our software or other software. It's siloed, and it's often very dumb, right? And we don't have a way to really make it semantically rich, make it possible to interact, and especially in industries like the horizontal infrastructure. I think the building industry is a little better with the BIM and all that, but when it comes to roadway, railway, all of this, it needs more improvement in that context. So our approach is being to essentially help gather all that information into a digital twin. And so the data is one of the key aspects that you need to master to do AI. The second aspect is context of the engineering itself, and I'll talk about it some more. So in terms of data, we created a platform technology that is open source. It's called iTwin, and allows to essentially gather all information from different sources and to make it possible to standardize all this information into industry infrastructure schemas, which can then be exploited. As I said, to connect this robot with this human, you need to have a language, and that's the data. But not only every data, it needs to be smart data. It needs to be data that is live, that is fed in different ways, that is harvest, that is of high quality. And so that's what the digital twin is about. I was hearing what Tom was talking about from Infrastructure Ontario. That's a fantastic approach, right? Start with a digital twin and try to harness all that data together to make decisions downstream. I think that's a fantastic, really as a leadership position that Ontario is taking on that. It's very strong. So, having all that data in a way that, and assembled in a way that is intelligent, up to date, and accurate is the whole data. But then you need a data custodian. You need people responsible for making that digital twin accurate and always up to date. It's very important. The second thing you need for having good AI is understanding of the actual domain, right? So transportation, cities, buildings, energy, you need to have that knowledge. Cannot just be, because each of these domains have specificity that need to be understood. And the data, it may or may not be that explicit about that. So you need to understand the technology, the domain, and the data. So all of that, and not everyone can actually do that, right? So we're trying to help on that space. Why is that important? Because AI can be hallucinating. This is an example here, and there's a QR code coming up where essentially somebody using a generative AI was able to generate a piece of code, essentially, and made that library available. And the person got 30,000 downloads of a library that was totally hallucinated, that never worked, that was losing component that was never useful. 30,000 downloads, right? Do we want that in infrastructure? Clearly not, right? We want something that is going to work every time, all the time. But AI is it's just statistics, right? So it doesn't give you always the same answer. And you got to be able to be aware of that and to use it for what it's great at. And that's one of the danger here of AI. We definitely don't want to have this, right? We don't want to have a bridge that's going to have, 6 fingers, or a railway that looks very strange, right? So you need to be able to have that predictability and use AI for what it's good for, which is augmenting the human, not replacing the human, because it can do things like this, and you got to be able to deal with it. So that's a key thing. Bentley is also very careful when it comes to your data. Whether you're an owner or an engineering consultant or a contractor or an operator, we care about your data. And we have established 3 base principles: control, contribution, and trust. So essentially this idea of saying you are in control of the data. So this is your data. At no time we will use your data without your explicit consent. I've seen other software companies basically have a smart little mark in their EULA that says, oh, by the way, we're going to use your data for training and learning. And the CEO of this company, which will remain nameless, was very proud of that. And I was like, oh my God, really? That's not what we're going to do. So every data that we leverage for our machine learning and so on is basically being fully vetted, approved by the client, and the client has basically signed an explicit data contract with us to be able to use it. We use also a lot of open data, but the problem with engineering data is not like you can find a whole ton of that online. It's just not there, right? It's within everyone's enterprise, and for the right reason. And the third thing is trust. Essentially, we want to make sure that people trust us, and they have a high level of visibility on how the data is being used and what will it produce at the end of the day, right? So that sort of visibility and traceability is key in any AI venture that you're going to embark in. So a lot of engineering firms today use AI, whether that's create proposal for health and safety, whether that's for business development and so on. So a lot of things are being used today in engineering firm. Like I think most of you probably, use either Microsoft Copilot or a GPT for some form to do something with it. If you're not, you should, because you don't want to be in the side where you're the human that is not being augmented, because kind of others ought to be augmented, right? So you got to be careful there. But then what is Bentley doing in terms of AI applied to engineering? So I've got 4 little examples, some of which are under development, some of which are ready to use. So this one is one that is ready to use. So in the process facilities and manufacturing, there's a challenge of people have a lot of PNID documents, right? And those documents are in PDF. So those are unintelligent formats, but they need to, there's a need, everything is brownfield these days, so they need to go and retrofit some of these things. So through AI, we're able to, process all these PNID documents and create smart CAD engineering BIM models that will then be leveraged downstream for decision making. So that saves them, hours and hours of time to basically not having to retrofit that manually. So that's available today in our products on the plant side. Another thing in terms of construction is that, and another thing that was mentioned here, a lot of the things on the construction side are not necessarily the most effective and most efficient. So one of the things is a lot of contractors or field workers take a lot of pictures. Those pictures may not be in all the right spot and so on. So we built an AI that is built within our Synchro capability that allows to essentially harvest all that information, index that, and make it searchable across the board. So really useful. Like, this is not high tech, but it's like exactly what the people demand and need in the field there. Another example, more on the operational side of things, is essentially on bridge inspection. So combining reality modeling, reality capture to drones, LiDARs with AI, essentially we're able to do automated bridge inspection. So we created transformers that leverage both the 2D and the 3D aspect of the models and are able to essentially identify crack, rust, and you could build your own model for your own enterprise in there. So every bridge needs to be inspected every 2 years, for example, and sometimes visually, sometimes more, essentially, and it can be dangerous, right? Some of the big bridges and so on. Send a drone, send a robot to do part of the job, and for the things that you identify could be issues, then send a human to go check it, double check that for sure. And so that's already in production. The third aspect, which is under development, which I'm pretty proud of talking about here today, is the site design. So site civil, right? Many of you are in the commercial building, industrial building, or residential. But before you go and build your vertical construction, you need to prepare the land, right? The land development of that. And that's an industry that hasn't evolved in years. Essentially, it's like 2D CADs, a lot of manual work, a lot of rework. If there's a change and so on, it's very, very painful. So we're essentially coming in and creating a brand new product that is going to accelerate that. And that product is digital twin ready and is AI enabled as well in that context. So what does it do in terms of AI? It has 3 components there. The number one is we've leveraged a GPT engine, but we've embedded that in the software. So it's no longer your GPT separated from the rest. It's answering questions. So for example, if I have to create a new site, develop a new site, and I want to understand what is the regulation in Toronto about the setbacks, what are my setbacks and so on in terms of meters and distance, you got to read a ton of documents, right? So you could load your document in the software, and we index all that, search, make it searchable through a human, natural language, and make actions on that. So essentially, you can say, okay, my setbacks are 5 meters and so on. So this is the regulation I've got to adhere to, and you could tell the software like make it so, right? Or you can ask it, can you tell me whether I'm compliant or not? And it'll check, and yes. And yes, you are, or no, you're not. Number of parking space, how many parking spaces do I need? All of this. Think about all the things that hundreds of pages of document that a human has to read or to have the experience to do, which is, as we said earlier, a lot of the workforce not there. So when the experienced guy or person is retired, so it's not possible to do that. So both understanding documentation and taking actions to the natural language interface and talk to it as well. Be able to talk to it, make it so, and do these sort of things. And so all of that is being implemented. The second thing is around more generative AI in terms of, suggest layouts. So where should I put my building? Where should I put my parking lot? Where should I put my building slab? All those things need to be possible to do and are possible to do. So we're able to optimize some of these things. And through using neural network, which is much faster than standard optimization, we're able to do this and suggest several best options to the engineer without having to wait for hours for the optimization engine to process. So it's much, much faster. And the third one, which is less sci-fi, but is the most useful aspect, according to the users we're working with, is drawing production. Drawing production is between 30% to 50% of an engineering project. And we never plan enough time because there's always going to be a last-minute change. And it's going to be weekend rework for the team. And nobody wants to work weekend, right? So you kind of have a problem, right? So we sort of have automated all that, essentially looking at hundreds and thousands of PDF and documents. We're now able to do a better job than a human in placing text and creating drawings. So that means you cut 30 to 50% of your project time and avoid a rework. Oh, and by the way, do a better job than the machine. Do a better job than the machine. And for example, AI is always, not always, but for the past 8 years has been better than human at identifying things in a picture, right? So this is what we're bringing here to the table in terms of, the mundane task. I don't argue with my wife and the iRobot that clean our floors, right? I mean, nobody really, we're not. But if the robot was going to talk to my wife instead of me, I would have a problem with that, right? So this whole idea of augmenting and removing the mundane task is really something that we're looking at doing. So let me show you a quick example of this latest and greatest software. So essentially on the right side, you have this iTwin assistant that allows you to essentially ask questions. So it's got a document loaded in there and is able to ask questions. What are my setbacks? How many parking space do I need, and so on. And it just is applying all of that. Am I compliant? Can you change the parking angle? All of this, right? So those are intelligent objects, and they're essentially able to react to the command that are being driven from the Copilot. Then the second piece is this optimization. How do I get my grading right? And how do I get all of that working in a way that is going to, make sure I've got the optimal site in there and suggest me some layouts for that. And finally, the third bit is this automated drawing production that you just select what you want to label and annotate and draw, and it basically does that. And it's basically leveraging the AI that is running in the cloud and provides you a valid drawing. And we can tell you this is the PDF, for example, we use on the left side, which was one of the input data. What we used to have, previously in our software, but you're going to see this in all CAD 2D software as well, and what we're able to do with AI. So we found errors on actually the left plan, and the CEOs of the companies we work with, they're like, "What do you mean we have error?" And like, you do. And they were a little bit interested by that because they thought they were perfect, right? And the machine is actually better than the human and some of that because it's very repetitive, it's highly guided. But also the thing that we're able to do at this stage is to apply the style and your sort of personal style. So through few-shot learning technique, you'd say, okay, this is what my company does, my special twist in my plan, you could show the software a couple of your plans, which stays within your own organization, and it'll create plans that look alike. A little bit like you can do in Microsoft Copilot, where you could say, here's my input document, here's my template, what I want to look like, create me a third document. This sort of concept, right? So this is the power of AI put there. So as a closing statement, AI is clearly there to stay. We're investing heavily in that. Hopefully you are also heavily investing into that. And this is going to augment the humans to basically be stronger engineers, stronger contractor, stronger operators to make better decisions in the future. And not only in the future, I mean now there's a lot of things that you need to be interested into and stay abreast of the latest and greatest technology there. So thank you for your time.
If you have questions, you can make your way to the mic.
Hey, Adnan from Comtech. You spoke about high quality data and context. In some projects, like the data works for that project, but it doesn't work for this project.
Right.
How do you decipher that?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. So there's things that are just going to be not possible, and others that will be possible in that context. And this is having a generic model that you can then train for your own benefit and your own project within your own enterprise. I think that's the way of the future in that context, especially when it comes to complex engineering tasks and that sort of, and the like. Yeah, I think a generic model with ability to augment that is what we need. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Said from Pomelo, from the innovation team of Pomelo. So thank you for the great presentation. Just have a general question about, because my master's thesis was about BIM, and so I had two methods, that BIM-based method that I innovated. And just want to know, because you are in the software development part and you do the software development, just want to know that the kind of procedure of starting a new kind of software and to develop, and because as a part of my thesis, I reviewed all the BIM-based method in different countries. Just want to know this process in your team and the obstacle that we have for that to do a change and implement a new method in construction.
Yeah, let me rephrase the question. I guess what is the process we use for software development?
Just starting from a kind of scratch and as a new idea to develop, and what's the obstacle in different, for example, in Canada, to do this and do a change in construction industry for that
Sure.
method. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's two questions, right? How we do it and how the change management happens. How we do that, we use a discovery process. So, for example, the site civil product we're developing, we're working with first mover advantage that we created, a program that we created. We work with several large engineering firms that are essentially working with us in validating ideas, we understand their process. They also contribute data to the model explicitly and that sort of things. And so really that's the idea, right? This is this process of iterative, agile development where you every step of the way understand the client needs. But innovation doesn't happen always like that. You don't always start from the problem and you get to the solution. It often starts with sometimes the technology, right? Then you sort of like, oh, this is now possible. And then you sort of show that to the client and they like it. And then you think about other ideas. So it's not a linear process. As far as change management, that's the hardest part. I think everybody mentioned this. I mean, the tech is out there, and some of the things that was mentioned earlier around construction, innovations and things. And then you get process, you get people, that need to be dealt with. So this whole concept of people, process, and technology, you have to evolve together. You don't want to leave anyone behind. You want to, make sure that everybody can be there. It starts with the schools. Contributing with schools, providing grant to PhD students, masters, but also in the technical school, right? Providing software for free for all the students, for example, that sort of things. So it's really a hard, long road. But I think the ChatGPT of that world has shown that what's possible, and is just accelerating. And I think probably your generation will help us as well to leapfrog some of that, and just move forward faster in there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the talk. What's a killer AI use case that you're excited about, but that's not yet possible?
That's a good one. What do you think? So, yeah, why not? What do you think?
Well, end-to-end design, fully compliant.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, this is the dream, right? And that would be semantically rich, and that'd be digital twin ready, all that. So, yes, absolutely, that would be the thing. With AI, I think today, as I said, is statistics, right? So it doesn't provide you always the same answer. So it'll give you an answer. I don't know how much you played with the GPT of that world, but you ask it 4 times for an answer, and you get something slightly different, and they might all be good, right? Where in engineering, you get on something more deterministic. So we need to ground that. I think the essentially will be a combination of AI. For example, one of the things that we're working on is leveraging, for example, in structural, right? Structural is a very deterministic. Somebody said they were structural earlier. So we have a lot of software in structural engineering. So what we do is we use these engines to train a neural network, can provide an answer within a millisecond instead of 5 hours, but you wanted the answer. And then once you determine that this is the best design, and send it in the traditional so that you get always the same answer kind of thing. So I think it'll be a combination and not necessarily only AI. Because AI will be good for some things and not good for other things. And one of which is this whole hallucination and generative design, generative AI could be dangerous from that perspective. But for any things that is mundane tasks, any automations like the drawing production side of things where placing a text here or placing a text there more or less the same, or a few millimeters doesn't make a huge difference, that's where it's going to be very good at initially. And I think as it evolves, it will get more in that. But what we're hearing from the engineering community is that don't take away the engineering part, because that's what we're good at, but take away anything that gets in the way of us spending time on the engineering side. So that's what we're more focused on, which is less glamorous and less researchy and less fun, but actually much more useful, and that's what we need to do. It goes back to what we said earlier about discovery and listening, Yeah. So thank you. We have a booth here, so I'll be around this afternoon if you have any questions, want to touch base, connect, anything. I'm happy to be available. We also have Paul that is around, and will be there. He's based in Toronto directly. So thank you very much for your time. Have a good lunch.